Davey D hanging out with you this afternoon, Hard Knock Radio. And for people who don't know, you probably got the word that Icon, a legendary pioneering figure, passed away this morning, the result of reported suicide, a bullet to the head. We're talking about Don Cornelius, the founder of Soul Train, a show that was transformative and really laid the blueprint for many of the shows that are on today, from the MTVs to the BETs, what have you. Long before any of those things existed, it was all about Don Cornelius. And as we try to deal with the shock of that, I wanted to take time out, because it is Black History Month, and look into a little bit more about who this guy was. One of the people who got a chance to meet him and who says that one of their big breaks came from being on Soul Train is Chuck D, a Public Enemy. Chuck, how you doing?
Well, this starts off Black History Month, and wow, it's just like it's mind-blowing, because I'm on my way to Chicago to do a big speaking event, and knowing my history, Don Cornelius gets the start of Soul Train in Chicago back in the late 60s, and was actually one of the hot DJs on WVON, which was founded by the Chess Brothers, Voice of the Negro, big AM station out there that had a lot of significance. And Don Cornelius took his idea of putting black performers on television out west to create the further legacy of what we know as Soul Train today. So he's sorely missed. I knew him personally. I call him the Don, and he is really the biggest reason why we became a national sensation, because we didn't have black radio give less than two hoots about us. But when we finally performed on Soul Train, we actually recorded it in October of 1987, and they aired it in December of 1987. We had went on a winter tour, one of the first big tours of Europe by a rap group, us and LL Cool J, the Def Jam Tour '87. And when we came back, everybody said how they saw us on Soul Train.
Wow. I think people don't really appreciate the social, political, economic climate that existed when Don Cornelius launched Soul Train. And right. For many of us who grew up in the 70s, I don't even think they can appreciate what that meant, having a show like that come on every Saturday. Could you maybe explain that? Because I think we take for granted in the age of YouTube that if I want to see a Public Enemy CD performance, I can pull it up. I can turn on my pop radio station and hear a black artist. But back then, it was very, very different.
Yeah, very, very different. You didn't see black people on TV. Simple as that. And Don Cornelius had the license to show that whenever he had black people on TV, it was not just cultural spreading, but it was also profitable. So when it came down to realizing how significant Soul Train was to somebody growing up in the 1970s, such as I didn't even have a sense of geography other than Jet and Ebony, and Soul Train was that television element where I was like, wow, so that they're in California, wow, so I got to get out there, and it was just almost like one of those things where it kind of blindsided you with the imagery, because I thought that everybody in Soul Train, I thought everybody in LA was just like Soul Train. I didn't know, but
well, one of the things that's interesting that he went beyond the music. I recall seeing the first time I saw people roboting and moonwalking way before Michael Jackson. I saw that on Soul Train, the Electric Boogaloos, the Lockers. Can you talk about just him being a curator of just culture above and beyond the music?
Well, Don Cornelius definitely he nationalized the culture across one gigantic broad stroke of music and art and entertainment and even sports. I remember there was an episode where he brought on Jim Brown and Fred Williamson, who actually went into movies after sports, and And so that whole, I would say, melting pot of art and entertainment and sports was in Los Angeles, and Don Cornelius reflected all that too and made it national. So
One of the things I remember about him is that he commanded respect. Nobody pulled any antics when they went on his show. Could you speak to that aspect and what it was like when you first met him and the group first performed?
well, number one, he was imposing in his voice and size. So he was a big dude, and also he was like almost like, yeah, he was a father figure. He wasn't going to play around. He wasn't going to let you play around with his show. And I think a lot of the opinion that people have is that he kind of didn't dig rap, but he always kind of waited for it to come along and kind of pay a salute and respect to the music that he kind of respected. And I remember when we were invited on in 1991 to do Shut 'Em Down and Can't Trust It, Flavor asked the Don to if we could get 3 moments of silence for Red Fox and Miles Davis, who had just passed away at that time. And the Don just thought it was quite profound that somebody of a rap element would actually, or our age, would recognize the greatness in those two to have a moment of silence. So that was big.
What was your fondest memory of just watching Soul Train? What performances stand out to you? I mean, I've seen everybody from Michael Jackson to Sly Stone, George Clinton. I mean, everybody who was anybody went on Soul Train. That seemed to be the pinnacle of having made it. Today, it's like if you get on MTV or if you're on some Hot 97 or something. But back then, it was you didn't make it until you were on Soul Train.
Right. Well, you didn't make it till you was on Soul Train because radio still was regionalized, and you in each and every region you had to have somebody that would negotiate your recordings with that radio outlet. I mean, it was real simple. If your records didn't get on radio, you wasn't heard, and if you wasn't heard, you wasn't sold. But Soul Train kind of like was able to compensate for the beginnings of rap music a lot because, okay, we wasn't heard, but we were seen. And also we was able to do concerts by being involved with groups that already had a following like Run DMC, the Beastie Boys, LL Cool J, and other Def Jam acts. So that combination of live concerts with being invited on Soul Train was big for us.
Do you know if Don Cornelius, when he did this, did he get a lot of resistance in terms of networks not wanting to pick up the show or advertisers not wanting to deal with him? I know that Sears was the first to sponsor him, but was there a backlash? And I'm asking this just going through the 70s because that's when you had the disco era, and it was a backlash against disco and black people in general. So I didn't know how Soul Train was, what sort of storm Soul Train had to weather.
Well, it was always a backlash, I should say blacklash, whenever you're trying to put black folks on TV in America. Even in this post-racial time, you can put black faces on TV as long as they have a white producer, and usually it is you see black faces all over the tube and with a white production situation. In these post-racial times, I'm calling it as that, usually not in the favor of, in the best interests of how we want to be able to be perceived as black people here in America. Don Cornelius faced a blizzard of racial distrust, and it being a business, and also it being something that would actually reflect in that particular station's bottom line, and also, I guess, fortitude. So, I mean, Don Cornelius fought a lot of invisible battles, and he won a lot of invisible battles. And the fact that they're invisible to much of the masses, once again, kind of like makes many of us not give him the respect that he deserved when he was alive, and also in his passing right now.
As we close out, Chuck, we've lost Etta James, Jimmy Castor,
Johnny Otis.
And Johnny Otis, right? Johnny Otis from our radio station here. Three iconic figures in the pantheon of black music, even though Johnny was Greek, had a major impact on that. How do we bring all those figures, along with Don Cornelius, together and really underscore black history?
Well, number one, you're not going to keep people alive. People are born, they live, and they pass on. The thing that you keep alive is you keep their history alive, and you keep their legacies alive, and you salute them when they're alive. I mean, one day me and Flavor wanted to go by the Don's crib or whatever in office and just say hello, but we couldn't get in touch with them that particular day. But I mean, those type of things always count. So you sometimes, when somebody passes on, it should be a message to figure out, okay, who's around that we can actually give thanks to, since we can't really give thanks in person to somebody who has just passed away.
So definitely make the most out of the history we're creating right now.
I mean, look, I mean, it's death is a part of life, and everybody's not around forever. But one thing you could keep around forever is the legacy of what they let. You let that, keep honoring that. But also when people are around, it never, ever hurts to just say thank you or, and just say, wow, we really appreciate you for making it possible for me to be me.
Well, that's something that we should definitely take to heart and something to end on. And
I
think
what? Here's another thing, Dave. People could start with their own families.
That's a good point.
There's people, there's aunts, there's uncles, there's parents. There's people, who are your friends. There's a lot of people you could just say, hey, once in a while, hey, hey, I love you and thank you. And that's it.
Well, that's real talk. And I think we should be thanking Public Enemy, 25 years in the business, something like close to 60 tours all around the world.
No, it's 80 tours. And also I say,
80 tours? Wow.
I thank you, Dave. I thank and love you, Dave. How about that, We go back a long way before Cadillacs, 8-tracks, Similacs, and Hot Wax.
Well, there you go. We appreciate it. And Chuck, thank you for sharing some of these memories about Don Cornelius, especially as we kick off Black History Month. It's sad about his passing, but we will definitely keep the legacy alive. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.